It feels strangely appropriate that we have the lectionary texts that we do for this week as we sit within screaming distance of Election Day. And yeah, I said screaming distance. I mean, I will admit it. I am like one piece of election junk mail away from just letting this like scream into the void rip, and probably right in front of my mailbox on a somewhat busy street. It is not going to be pretty, folks. And it's like I'm one mean-spirited campaign ad away from like gnashing my teeth when they interrupt my TV shows. This is where I am. Political advertising during election season is always irritating, but this year is so intense and inescapable that Tuesday cannot get here soon enough. And yet there is also dread. Because we are in such a polarized, highly emotional, stakes are high kind of a state, the build up to Tuesday is almost unbearable. But the fear of what might happen after Tuesday is also emotionally all-encompassing. My friends, we are about to go through some stuff again. And I know it's not like I need to even tell you that any of this. You've also been checking your mailbox and watching TV and hearing radio ads written to persuasively scare the listener into voting for or against a candidate or proposition or measure. You've also grown weary of the ads that are singling out faults in leadership and lapses in judgment. It's hard to keep a beacon of love lit when negativity is literally permeating the airwaves around us. And yet, as Christians, that's the task we have before us. Wouldn't it be great if, like, at baptism, we were endowed with these, like, negativity deflectors, boom, boom, and, like, love amplifiers? Unfortunately, that's not how it works. And the work of following Christ is a lot of work. Fortunately, it's not work that's impossible. We have this entire book that teaches us to love more expansively and to care for one another more radically. I don't know if you've ever heard of it. It's kind of a good one. You know what I'm talking about. Anyway. And so, with this to preface the rest of our time together, let's boldly go into the readings for the day and see what wisdom they hold for us at this tense and historic time in our lives. Each of the readings today focuses on leadership in some way. And though we may like brush it off and say, no, not me. Not leadership material here. I mean, in one way or another, we are all leaders. We set examples. We interact with others in ways that can either help or harm. We lead in our homes and in our families, or with our housemates. We lead in our communities, in the choices we make, even when it comes to supporting certain businesses that are local and ethical and things like that. We lead when we attend a meeting or when we sign up for, a walkathon or a fundraiser. We lead when we extend kindness unexpectedly. And we lead when we vote. And because this church is especially involved in the community around us, many of us are leaders in the local fight against food scarcity. We lead when we make the decision to open the thrift shop. And we lead when we enforce rules to require masks upon entry. I mean, all of those are leadership decisions. We lead when we open our doors for worship, whenever we may be able to do that again. And we give a genuine, warm welcome to any person who comes through our door, no matter who they are or where they are on life's journey. That's leadership. We lead at cabinet meetings. And we lead in fellowship when we draw others into our conversations. I've got the support of the dogs, the neighbors' dogs. I don't know if you hear them, but they're like all into this sermon. So anyway, we lead when we draw others into our conversations during fellowship time. We lead as Christ followers, which is important to keep in mind. Even though we are led by the teachings found within the Bible, there is a certain amount of implied leadership responsibility when it comes to living our lives in a way where we care deeply for others. These readings speak directly to us to ensure that we not abuse our power or behave hypocritically. So even though we will be discussing leadership and looking at the circles of leadership that are accountable to us, and that's right, our leaders must be held accountable. They serve us. We do not serve them. We should also be reading this with a mirror in front of ourselves to make sure we don't turn any discussion like this into like some finger pointing party while ignoring our own shortcomings. When I first read the text from Micah this week, I reacted really strongly. I mean, like right out of the gate, I was like, yes, Micah! Because no one calls out injustice quite like the prophets, right? Micah is not speaking only to leaders, but he's speaking specifically to other prophets, the people who are in his circle, his colleagues, his peers. He is speaking to people who are in positions of power who can then misuse that power and authority. He's calling out those who will say that everything is fine. No, it's fine. We're fine. Nothing is wrong. We have plenty of resources. We have plenty of food, plenty of clean water. We have. Nothing is wrong because we have. We have all of these things. All is well, but others are hungry. Micah is condemning this like self-first approach to living. And note the words abhor justice and pervert equity, right? Now, if you cannot abhor justice if you aren't aware of what is and what is not just and unjust. To abhor something, to actively hate something and work against it, one has to know what it is. Perverting equity is the same thing. I mean, Micah is calling out all of the truly bad leaders who know better but refuse to act better. Whether it's because they'll lose support, or they've gotten used to their privileges and their comforts, or because they may not be as popular. And bad leaders will use that heartache and blood and sweat and toil of others to achieve their goals. And we see that when he says, you know, who builds Zion with blood and Jerusalem with wrong? When rulers and leaders knowingly use others with the intent of using them up in order to realize a dream that is not, you know, theirs and they will not benefit for. Those are the leaders, you know, we're talking about. Yeah, you get what I'm talking about. I mean, these bad leaders will utilize bribery and deceit. They'll scam money out of people and they'll favor those who have more money. And then they'll do the most dangerous thing a person with power can do. They will claim that God is on their side. People will become so afraid and confused, and they don't want to go against what has been said to be of God. And so they'll follow these prophets and these leaders that are not acting in accordance with what they are saying. And as we continue to examine leadership, let's remember to always turn that looking glass on ourselves frequently. We cannot simply point the finger without genuinely, honestly asking ourselves how we stack up against these qualities of dangerous and toxic leadership. In Paul's letter, we're given a view into the way leadership should behave. Paul explains that the way that he and his colleagues serve while they're ministering to others, like all these fledgling Christ-following communities, he explains that they work hard the entire time so as not to impose or burden the folks that they are serving. These folks in their care, they strive to be blameless and not create more problems than they solve, so that their message and their mission is not thrown off by some actions of theirs, or like, well, they left dirty dishes in the sink, so obviously I'm not going to follow that set of rules and that God. That's not what I'm doing because they did not clean up after themselves. I mean, that's a real fear. I think that it's a beautiful way of being leaders to also serve while they're leading, and to want to be blameless in that, so that it doesn't cause more problems and detract from the message. Also, they're grateful and they thank the people they're serving, like really thank them. And this is important to remember, you know, as much as they thank God, they're thanking the people that they are serving. Because as we care for others, we need to thank them for letting us do this beautiful work. And also it helps keep us humble so we don't get some savior complexes, because we're not here for us. We're here to serve God. We are here to bring this more beautiful realization of God's love into the world. And that's an amazing thing. But we can't do that if we're like, oh, look how great I am. I did some awesome stuff. And this is a hard one to fall into. I do all the time. I have to constantly say, no, Kim, that's not how you handle that. You got to back up, you know, you're not doing this for any glory. And that's what we need to always remember. That's why I say always turn that like looking glass on ourselves, right? I mean, humility goes a long way. The act of being among the people who Paul is ministering to is also a really important way for Paul to know that he's like actually serving the actual needs of the people, instead of just saying, oh, I think this is what they need, let's just give them this. And this is important because not only does that mean that we are, you know, bringing other people into this creation of whatever it is that we are working toward, it also means that we're not doing things that are potentially harmful because we've, you know, prescribed a solution to a need that may not even exist. And that's beautiful that that's what Paul is talking about, is that idea of going in and knowing a community and being among them. And so as we look at our leaders and as we examine our own ways of being in the world, we should take note of who our leaders are listening to and who they are claiming to serve. And does that mesh? Does that mix up? You know, do those things go together? Are they serving the people that they say they're listening to? Are they listening to people? Are they ignoring people? It's important to remember that and look at that. Do they spend time with that demographic? I mean, real time to get to know the needs, desires, dreams, fears, and heartaches of people. How can we hold our leadership accountable to listening to the people they serve? This is our job. What are our responsibilities to all people to be served with justice and equity? And then there's our reading in Matthew. I added a few extra verses to the lection today because, one, we're going to skip right past them next week, and I think these are really powerful statements. And two, I wanted to give our reader this morning a few extra things to read, and those woe to the hypocrites verses. I mean, I don't know if you stopped and read them or if you read the scripture yourself, but that I recommend you go back and listen to Chris's reading. He is very dramatic. I knew he could really do these verses justice. But in all seriousness, there may not be a better pericope for us to ponder and meditate on before a gigantic election. This selection from Matthew gives us a caution issued by Jesus against making big, fancy, bold declarations of what is right at the same time, you know, while we're doing things to the exact opposite effect. It asks us what we are doing for show or to be performative, and what we are doing, really, really doing to follow the path of righteousness. It asks us to ask our leadership what it is they are telling others to do that they themselves will not follow. What heavy burdens are in the packs of expectations that they are setting on the backs of other people that they themselves have like no intention of carrying? What is more important to our leaders? Is it a place of honor, or is it equity and justice? Is the best and most stylish garb what's, you know, is that what's dragging them, you know, forward in their lives? Or is it upholding the dignity of all humankind? What are our priorities? And in those woe to you hypocrites verses, Jesus says that the corrupt leaders lock people out of heaven. They deny entry. They become these gatekeepers that they don't have the right to become the gatekeepers for. They go to these great lengths at great expense to convert someone. But if that person has come to the faith through these corrupted pathways, then that person has not been brought into a life-affirming, loving faith. And those woe to you verses will then apply to that newly minted convert as well. And I know, that feels really icky. But in what ways, as we think about that, are we guilty of this? In what ways can we hold our leaders accountable so they are not spreading deceit and manipulation for gain? Whatever the outcome of Tuesday is, it is essential that we do not become complacent, that we do not become hardened, that we do not become hypocritical. Even when those around us are, that our hearts continue to love even though it hurts, that we continue to speak truth to power even and especially when our people are the ones in power. We must hold those in leadership accountable. And to close, I offer this Franciscan prayer from Common Prayer, a liturgy for ordinary radicals. May God bless you with discomfort at easy answers, half-truths, and superficial relationships so that you may live deep within your heart. May God bless you with anger at justice or at injustice, oppression, and exploitation of people so that you may wish for justice, freedom, and peace. And may God bless you with enough foolishness to believe that you, yes, you, can make a difference in this world so that you can do what others claim that cannot be done. Go forth in God's grace.